Hello, Scream Demons, and welcome to the Screams from the Basement podcast with Sam and Casey. I'm one of your creepy co-hosts. I am Casey.
And I'm Sam the Damned, and let's get screaming.
And are you a fan of 1950s B movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or any of those other 100 from outer space movies from that era? Well, have you ever heard of Vampire Zombies from Space?
Vampire Zombies from Space is a satirical send-up of B movies of a race as a race of, you guessed it, vampire zombies come to Earth to take over the human race. Today we're joined by the film's director and co-writer, Michael Stasko, to discuss how these vampire zombies from space came to life. Please welcome Michael to the basement. Michael, welcome. Congrats on the movie.
Thanks. Sorry, I have to correct you off the bat. It's not a satire. It's a documentary. Listen, they're out there, okay? They're coming for it.
They're getting ready for us.
They're getting ready.
That's my first question for you. It was the question I had right away. Why is it vampire zombies and not zombie vampires that are going to be coming for us?
It's a good question, but I'll tell you, it's because they start off as vampires, right? So if you get married, you hyphen the other person's last name at the end. Logic, I guess. So they start off as vampires. Then, spoiler alert, if the vampires bite a human, it turns them into vampire zombies, right? So no one's actually no one in the movie is pure zombie. There are pure vampires, there's vampire zombies, and then there's like humans. So there you go.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That. I'm glad you cleared that up for me.
Yeah.
I was wondering what the difference between the two
was. You don't want to make a mistake when you're running into one of these guys.
I love that. I love this movie, Michael. This is like one of the most fun movies that I've seen in quite some time. I like the idea for the film spoofing like old Ed Wood kind of movies and using those old filmmaking techniques, the bats on the strings, the miniatures. How did that come about?
Well, this was a script. There was a very early draft written by my co-writers, Jacob Scrippa and Alex Foreman, when they were in grade 10 in high school. And they just kind of did like a Weekend Warrior thing, and they would shoot scenes from it with their buddies on, I think, mini DV. And then years later, 10 years later, or maybe longer, they brought it to me and were like, hey, take a look at this, script or whatever, because we were talking about other ideas and stuff. And this kind of stuck out as something right to do a send-up of. I was attracted to do a black and white film. The idea of it being a satire of a B movie from the 50s lent itself to low-budget filmmaking. You still had to spend a lot of time and effort to make it look correct, but it just checked a lot of boxes of things that I wanted to do in a film.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of this movie is those use of practical effects, like Sam mentioned. But my favorite thing though was the miniatures. Like I'm a sucker for a wonderful miniature, and you have so many of them in this movie. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit what it's like to shoot miniatures and incorporate that with actual human or vampire actors?
Yeah, so our miniature creator, Aaron Photo, who I knew for a while beforehand, and he's a filmmaker in his own right. When he heard what we was doing, he was all on board. And I was expecting, we wanted to make it look good, but I was so impressed every time he brought one of his miniatures to set to shoot. Just the work and the detail that went into it. And sometimes you're putting these miniatures in that shows up for a few seconds on screen time. And he's like, yep, that was 6 weeks of work for me to get that one down. And we initially shot 3 production weeks, so 15 days in August 2022. But then we shot another 15 days spread over weekends over the following calendar year. And a lot of that was because Aaron would be working on the next. He'd be doing the New York back alley scene, and then after 6 weeks, he's like, it's done. So then we'd get together for Saturday and Sunday and shoot that. And then he'd get more UFOs done. Or he'd build the big, the spaceship pods and stuff like that. So, hats off to Aaron Photo. Just did a lot with that.
Yeah, the miniature work in this is great. Another cool thing is, you're kind of sending up these B movies, these old classics, while also bringing a bit of trauma humor to it in a sense. And you get to work with Lloyd Kaufman, and Judith O'Dea from the original Night of the Living Dead. What was it like getting them in on this project and working with, legends in the genre?
I mean, yeah, it was pretty fitting. Like the ideal um, cameos would be those two people. Um, we had Jacob Strippa, the co-writer and co-producer. He was he I think he interned for Lloyd or did some social media work for him at one point. So like it was like years later he called him a favor, can you do a cameo? And Uncle Lloyd was on game and he didn't even know what part he was doing until he got off the plane. And this was a moment we were all debating like this might be sketch. And then we said, "You're playing the public masturbator," and he's like, "Yeah." And what do you want to do? Like he just like without a beat, it was just like I'm game. Um, and then Judith O'Dea was top of the list of as a filmmaker, an indie filmmaker, you have no problem sending out letters to agents and stuff asking for whatever, and like 99% of the time they say no, leave us alone. So she's in the top. I mean, she's the original Scream Queen, right? So we're like, you know what? It'd be amazing to get Barbara there, Judith O'Dea from Night of the Living Dead, to do the Elvira character. And she hadn't done acting in a while. She had built her own successful communications company, um, and she got the script and she loved it enough that we flew her out from Arizona to Canada to do the cameo. She was just wonderful, wonderful to work with.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that was like the moment of like I completely understood the humor seeing Lloyd on screen. I'm like, okay, you guys are going with that kind of
Yeah,
50s send up with that kind of trauma South Parkish type humor in it.
yeah. And you see him like I think in the third scene or something like that. So it's kind of a nice signal, a sense post to the audience say, okay, you're on board. This is what you're getting. You see the spoiler alert again. You see the mom explosion at the beginning, and that kind of hopefully sets the tone for you.
Yeah.
And then by the time you see Lloyd and you make the connection between those two things happening in the same world, it's like, okay, you're either on board or you're not at that point.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
I gotta ask then. So we're from the Mount Rushmore state of South Dakota. We're gonna ask you, what's your Mount Rushmore of 1950s B movies? If you were to make a Mount Rushmore, 4 movies on it, what would you put on that Mount Rushmore for 50s B movies?
Oh my God. It's tough because we reference so many from the 1950s. I don't know if I have any that are legit, like ones that I watched over and over again. There's a lot of the Mystery Science 3000 stuff that
Yeah.
they've spoofed. I think that was my attraction and my gateway to the 1950s. So, and then I'm sure I watched tons like as a kid, like late night kind of stuff or whatever. Um, but I mean, more of my influences for this was like what you mentioned, like the Ed Wood stuff, like Plan 9 from Outer Space is at the top of the list of what we were after to spoof. And then the look of it, not that this film compares to it, but Young Frankenstein was a big one for me. Mel Brooks. And then there's kind of like I don't know if you've seen a film called Top Secret with Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was before like the Naked Gun ones and stuff, but it's the same team that did that in Airplane. That and then John Waters, just kind of general wackiness where he's like John Waters still does plots. Like you watch this film, they have plots. And sometimes you forget that because there's just like weird characters and weird happenings, but like it's
Yeah.
always like makes sense in scripts. So I kind of like with this, like we originally just had a whole bunch of funny things we wanted to do, but we worked hard to like make sure there was a plot. So if you watch Vampire Zombies a second time or whatever, there's a plot and it works in there. You don't need to pay attention if you don't want to. But hopefully it all makes sense in there.
All of those influences are very evident in this movie. I love all of those, and this movie just, yeah, genuinely loved Vampire Zombies from Space.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Michael, we'll get you off here. The movie is out right now. We have one last question to leave you off with, though. If you are gonna tell people to watch Vampire Zombies from Space, which of course we are, we love this movie. What's one single movie you would pair with it as a double feature?
Wow. You know what? We've been paired with a few other films so far on the circuit. I would actually go a little bit different in that it's not a relative as far as like the vampire zombie monster, but as far as the participation, I would say Rocky Horror Picture Show, because that's the kind of feel we like in the live theater,
Yes.
where we got to the point where we were playing and people were yelling back at the theater, and when they would say something like, "Did he finish?" or whatever, and like I think there's repetitive kind of jokes and memes in there that, I mean, we have been paired with Rocky Horror Picture Show. I think in was it Atlanta, they played it right after us or whatever. So that, I mean, again, I don't know if we'll ever be that cult status. I mean, that's like top of the list as far as like cult following, but as far as like audience reaction and participation and calling back and forth, that's what I would aspire to, I guess.
That's awesome. Perfect pairing. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat a little vampire zombies from space. And all the listeners out there, watch out.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal: providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.